Throughout history, powerful people have had enemies who wanted them dead. Some of these enemies were calculated, skilled, and dangerous. Then there were these assassins, who proved that wanting someone dead and knowing how to make someone dead are very different skill sets, and that the most effective life insurance policy is sometimes just your assassin's staggering incompetence. Buckle up for a masterclass on how not to assassinate anyone. 1. In 1605, Guy Fawkes and his co-conspirators attempted to blow up the English Parliament and King James III by storing 36 barrels of gunpowder in a cellar beneath the House of Lords. The plot failed because one conspirator sent an anonymous warning letter to a Catholic lord telling him not to attend Parliament that day, apparently forgetting that warning letters about secret plots tend to reveal the existence of secret plots. Authorities searched the building, found Fawkes literally sitting next to 36 barrels of explosives with matches in his pocket, and arrested him before he could execute a plan that had taken months to arrange. The gunpowder plot became history's most famous failed assassination attempt, and Fawkes became history's most famous example of why you shouldn't send warning letters about terrorist attacks you're trying to keep secret. 2. During the Cold War, the CIA developed over 600 different schemes to assassinate Fidel Castro, including an exploding cigar designed to detonate when he smoked it. The operation failed when CIA operatives realized they had no way to guarantee Castro would smoke that specific cigar, couldn't ensure the cigar wouldn't explode prematurely during delivery, and had essentially created an expensive explosive disguised as a luxury item that might kill anyone who happened to light it. The exploding cigar was never deployed, and Castro continued smoking regular cigars for decades, while the CIA's most explosive assassination plan literally never got lit. The agency's cigar assassination program proved that making exploding cigars was easier than making Castro smoke them. 3. In 1960, the CIA planned to poison Castro's ice cream during a visit to the Hotel Habana Libre by hiding poison pills in his favorite dessert. The operation failed when the poison pills, which had been frozen inside the hotel freezer for storage, froze so solidly to the freezer coils that the would-be assassin couldn't remove them. The assassin stood in the freezer, desperately trying to extract frozen poison pills, while Castro finished his ice cream elsewhere, and the operation was abandoned when the pills eventually tore apart from the force of removal, rendering them useless. Castro survived because his would-be assassin couldn't figure out that storing poison pills in freezers might cause freezing-related problems, and the CIA learned that assassination plots can be foiled by basic physics. 4. In 1856, an assassin attempted to kill French Emperor Napoleon III by building an elaborate mechanical device that would fire multiple pistols simultaneously using a complex timing mechanism. The assassination device failed during the attempt when the mechanical trigger malfunctioned, causing all the pistols to fire at once but in completely wrong directions, missing Napoleon entirely while shooting several nearby stationary objects. The assassin's overly complex murder machine proved that engineering sophistication doesn't guarantee assassination success, and that sometimes simpler approaches work better than elaborate contraptions that can malfunction in spectacular ways. The failed assassin was arrested while trying to explain how his complex mechanism was supposed to work to police who couldn't understand why he hadn't just used one gun properly. 5. During World War II, British intelligence planned to assassinate Hitler by sneaking estrogen into his food to make him less aggressive and more feminine, apparently believing that hormone therapy would make the dictator less dangerous. The operation never progressed beyond planning stages when intelligence officers realized they had no reliable way to regularly poison Hitler's food, that hormone effects would take months or years to manifest, and that making Hitler slightly more feminine wouldn't necessarily stop a world war. The estrogen assassination plot was abandoned as possibly history's strangest military strategy, and British intelligence moved on to assassination plans that might actually kill targets rather than just affecting their hormone levels over extended periods. 6. In 1912, a would-be assassin attempted to kill former President Theodore Roosevelt by shooting him before a campaign speech. The bullet hit Roosevelt's steel eyeglass case, and the 50-page speech folded in his pocket, which slowed the bullet enough that it lodged in his chest but didn't reach his heart. Roosevelt proceeded to deliver his entire 90-minute speech with a bullet in his chest, beginning with, "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible. I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot." The assassination failed because the assassin didn't account for Roosevelt being too tough to die from a chest wound and too stubborn to skip a speech, just because he'd been shot. Roosevelt survived, the assassin was arrested, and the incident proved that some people are harder to kill than their assassins expect. 7. In ancient Rome, a group of assassins planned to kill Emperor Caligula, but kept postponing the assassination because they couldn't agree on the optimal timing, location, or method. The conspiracy grew so large with so many delayed assassination attempts that eventually dozens of people knew about the plot, including some of Caligula's guards who were also conspirators, but kept showing up for work protecting the man they planned to kill. When the assassination finally occurred, it was so poorly coordinated that multiple assassins attacked simultaneously without coordination, creating chaos where assassins were attacking each other by accident. Caligula was eventually killed, but the assassination succeeded despite the conspirators' planning rather than because of it. And Roman historians recorded it as evidence that large conspiracies work better in theory than execution. 8. The CIA once planned to kill Castro by giving him a diving suit contaminated with fungus and bacteria that would cause fatal skin disease. The operation failed when the CIA officer assigned to deliver the contaminated suit decided the plan was too unreliable and gave Castro a normal diving suit instead, apparently concluding that giving people diseased clothing was both ineffective and weird. Castro went diving in his uncontaminated suit, remained healthy, and never knew that American intelligence had briefly considered biological warfare via scuba equipment. The diving suit assassination became another entry in the CIA's extensive collection of bizarre Castro plots that failed before being attempted. 9. In 1800, a group of conspirators attempted to assassinate Napoleon Bonaparte by placing a massive explosive device on a street his carriage would travel. The infernal machine was a cart filled with explosives and shrapnel designed to detonate when Napoleon's carriage passed. The assassination failed because Napoleon's driver was drunk and drove faster than expected, speeding past the explosive device seconds before it detonated. The explosion killed several bystanders and destroyed nearby buildings, but Napoleon's carriage was far enough away that he survived with no injuries. The assassination plot was foiled by an intoxicated driver, accidentally saving his emperor's life by violating traffic norms, and the conspirators were executed for an attack that failed because they'd calculated timing based on assumptions about sober driving. 10. During the 1960s, the CIA developed exploding seashells to kill Castro, planning to place attractive shells in areas where Castro liked to scuba dive, hoping he would pick one up and be killed by the explosion. The operation was abandoned when CIA officers realized they couldn't guarantee Castro would notice the shell, couldn't ensure other divers wouldn't pick it up first, and had essentially created an indiscriminate underwater bomb disguised as a shell that might kill anyone. The exploding seashell plot never progressed beyond concept stage, and Castro continued diving without encountering weaponized marine life, though the CIA's creativity in thinking up ridiculous assassination methods remained impressive even when the methods themselves made no practical sense. 11. In 1835, Richard Lawrence attempted to assassinate President Andrew Jackson using 2 pistols loaded with powder and bullets. Both pistols misfired in succession due to humid weather affecting the powder, and Jackson proceeded to beat Lawrence with his walking cane while bystanders restrained the assassin. Lawrence's assassination attempt failed because he didn't check weather conditions before trying to kill someone with gunpowder weapons, and Jackson survived because his would-be assassin used weapons affected by humidity. The failed assassination demonstrated that even armed attackers can be defeated by weather and elderly presidents with canes, and Lawrence was later found insane and institutionalized. 12. The CIA once considered using mafia connections to poison Castro, recruiting organized crime figures who had lost Cuban casino businesses after Castro's revolution. The operation stalled when CIA officers gave the mafia poison pills, but couldn't verify whether the mobsters actually attempted assassination or just kept the pills as souvenirs while claiming they'd tried, but failed. The Mafia-CIA collaboration produced no confirmed assassination attempts, generated significant paperwork about meetings between government agents and criminals, and ultimately proved that outsourcing assassination to organized crime created accountability problems. Castro remained alive, The mafia contacts remained unreliable, and the CIA learned that criminal organizations weren't necessarily more effective at murder than government agencies. 13. In 1944, Count von Stauffenberg planted a bomb in a briefcase during a meeting with Hitler, intending to kill the Nazi leader and end the war. The assassination failed when another officer moved the briefcase to the opposite side of a heavy table leg, which shielded Hitler from the worst of the blast when it exploded. Hitler survived with minor injuries while several other officers died. The assassination plot then completely fell apart because the conspirators had assumed Hitler would die and began their coup attempt based on that assumption, only to discover Hitler was alive and very angry. The failed assassination demonstrated the importance of verifying target death before announcing successful assassinations, and the conspirators were executed after launching a coup against a dictator who wasn't actually dead. 14. In 1605, before the famous gunpowder plot, there was an earlier failed assassination attempt when someone tried to kill King James IV by shooting him with a crossbow. The assassination failed when the assassin's crossbow string snapped during the shot attempt, causing the bolt to fall at his feet rather than fly toward the king. The would-be assassin was caught standing with a broken crossbow and a bolt on the ground, making it extremely obvious what he'd been attempting. The assassination plot was foiled by equipment malfunction and the assassin's failure to maintain his weapon properly, proving that even medieval assassination attempts required basic equipment maintenance. 15. The CIA planned to kill Castro using a poisoned wetsuit by offering it as a gift from a CIA-connected lawyer, with the wetsuit contaminated with deadly fungus and bacteria designed to cause fatal infections. The operation failed before starting when the CIA officer delivering gifts decided the wetsuit plan was ridiculous and gave Castro a normal wetsuit instead, followed by an expensive diving kit. Castro used the uncontaminated wetsuit safely, and the CIA's biological warfare diving equipment plan joined the growing list of Castro assassination methods that failed because CIA officers refused to execute their own plans. The wetsuit assassination became another example of assassination plots being too absurd even for the people ordered to carry them out. 16. In 1981, John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate President Ronald Reagan to impress actress Jodie Foster, apparently believing that shooting presidents was an effective romantic gesture. Hinckley shot Reagan, who survived after surgery, and the assassination failed to impress Foster, who was horrified rather than impressed. The assassination attempt succeeded in shooting Reagan, but failed in its stated goal of romantic impression, and Hinckley was institutionalized after demonstrating that assassination attempts motivated by celebrity crushes are both ineffective and insane. Reagan recovered, Foster remained unimpressed, and the incident proved that shooting people doesn't make celebrities like you. 17. During the 1960s, the CIA developed a plan to use Castro's love of scuba diving against him by contaminating his diving regulator with tuberculosis bacteria. The operation was abandoned when CIA medical experts explained that tuberculosis bacteria wouldn't survive in diving equipment, and that even if they did, transmission through breathing apparatus was unlikely to cause infection. The contaminated regulator plot joined other failed CIA diving-related assassination schemes, and Castro continued diving with equipment that wasn't weaponized by intelligence agencies who'd finally run out of creative but impractical underwater assassination ideas. 18. In 1912, a would-be assassin attempted to kill French President Raymond Poincaré by disguising himself as a waiter and trying to poison his food. The assassination failed when the disguised assassin mixed up which dishes were going to which diners and accidentally served the poisoned meal to a different government official who noticed the food tasted strange and didn't eat it. The assassin was caught when restaurant staff questioned why a waiter they didn't recognize was serving important officials, and the assassination plot was foiled by basic restaurant security and the assassin's inability to keep track of which food he'd poisoned. The failed poisoner demonstrated that assassination by disguised food service requires knowing which food goes to which person. 19. The CIA once considered killing Castro with a poisoned pen that would inject deadly toxin when used. The operation never progressed beyond development stage because CIA officers couldn't figure out how to guarantee Castro would use that specific pen, couldn't ensure the pen wouldn't be tested on others first, and couldn't determine how to deliver a poisoned pen to someone who had many pens available. The poisoned pen joined the CIA's collection of assassination devices that sounded clever in meetings but made no practical sense in actual operation. And Castro continued writing with normal pens that didn't contain lethal injection mechanisms hidden in their design. 20. In 1850, an assassin attempted to kill Queen Victoria by shooting her as her carriage passed. The assassination failed when the pistol misfired, giving the assassin's position away but not producing any bullets. The assassin then tried to flee but was immediately tackled by bystanders who'd seen him attempting to shoot the Queen. The failed assassination demonstrated that having a plan for equipment malfunction is important, that fleeing after misfiring makes intent obvious, and that attempting to assassinate popular monarchs in front of crowds results in being tackled by said crowds. The would-be assassin was convicted based on clearly attempted murder, despite his weapon not working. 21. During World War II, British intelligence developed a plan to kill Hitler by sneaking laxatives into his food to incapacitate him during important meetings, apparently believing that making Hitler use the bathroom frequently would change the war's outcome. The operation was abandoned when intelligence analysts realized that giving Hitler diarrhea wouldn't actually stop the Nazi war machine, and that incapacitation through intestinal distress wasn't a viable military strategy. The laxative assassination plot became another example of wartime plans that sounded ridiculous even to the people planning them, and British intelligence moved on to assassination methods that might actually assassinate rather than just inconvenience their targets. 22. In 1994, someone attempted to assassinate President Bill Clinton by firing shots at the White House from Pennsylvania Avenue. The assassination failed because the shooter was too far away for pistol accuracy. The White House is large and Clinton was deep inside, and shooting at buildings from public streets is ineffective when your target is somewhere inside, but you don't know where. The would-be assassin was arrested after firing multiple shots that hit the White House exterior, but came nowhere close to actually threatening anyone inside. The failed assassination demonstrated that shooting at buildings from a distance requires knowing where your target is located within the building, and preferably using weapons with appropriate range. 23. The CIA planned to use mafia contacts to plant a poisoned cigar in Castro's cigar supply, enlisting organized crime figures who supposedly had access to Castro's personal items. The operation failed when the mafia contacts admitted they actually had no access to Castro's personal cigars, had exaggerated their connections to sound useful, and couldn't actually deliver poisoned anything to Castro without being caught. The mafia cigar plot ended without any assassination attempt, and the CIA learned that criminal informants sometimes oversold their capabilities to maintain lucrative consulting relationships with intelligence agencies who paid for information regardless of whether the information enabled actual assassinations. 24. In 1865, Lewis Powell attempted to assassinate Secretary of State William Seward as part of the conspiracy that killed Abraham Lincoln. Powell gained entry to Seward's home by claiming to deliver medicine, then attacked Seward with a knife. The assassination failed because Seward was wearing a surgical brace from a recent carriage accident that protected his neck from fatal knife wounds. Powell's attack seriously injured Seward and several family members, but failed to kill anyone, and Powell was caught fleeing the scene and later executed. The assassination attempt was foiled by medical equipment, coincidentally protecting the target, and demonstrated that even successful building entry doesn't guarantee successful assassination. 25. During the 1960s, the CIA developed depilatory powder to sprinkle in Castro's shoes that would make his beard fall out, apparently believing that making Castro beardless would reduce his political authority and leadership credibility. The operation was abandoned when CIA officers realized that even if they could make Castro's beard fall out, which was unlikely, it wouldn't actually kill him or end his regime. The beard removal assassination plot was filed away as possibly the strangest CIA plan that was somehow taken seriously in meetings, and Castro kept his beard for decades without encountering weaponized hair removal products in his footwear. 26. In 1950, two Puerto Rican nationalists attempted to assassinate President Truman by attacking Blair House, where he was staying during White House renovations. The assassination failed when Secret Service agents and police engaged the attackers, resulting in a gunfight that killed one assassin and wounded the other, while Truman remained safely inside. The attack failed because the assassins didn't realize that presidential residences have armed guards who shoot back, that attacking buildings with security details is difficult, and that presidential protection continues even during renovations. One Secret Service agent died defending Truman. The assassination was prevented, and the surviving assassin was convicted and imprisoned. 27. The CIA once considered giving Castro a poisoned diving suit as a diplomatic gift, contaminating it with fungus that would cause chronic skin disease and eventually death. The plan was abandoned before execution when the CIA officer assigned to deliver the gift decided giving people diseased clothing was both ineffective and morally questionable. Castro received a non-contaminated diving suit instead, continued diving safely, and remained unaware that American intelligence had briefly considered biological warfare via athletic equipment. The diving suit plot became another CIA assassination scheme that was too bizarre for the agents ordered to execute it. 28. In 1 BC, a conspiracy attempted to assassinate Roman Emperor Augustus using poison delivered in food at a dinner party. The assassination failed when the food taster, who consumed meals before the emperor to test for poison, died from the poisoned food, thereby revealing the assassination attempt before Augustus ate anything. The conspirators were caught because their poison worked too quickly, and obviously killing the tester before they could serve the poisoned food to the intended target. The assassination plot demonstrated the importance of understanding how food tasting security works when planning poison assassinations, and that effective poison should probably not kill people instantly and obviously. 29. During World War II, the British developed a plan to kill Hitler using poisoned chocolate disguised as luxury confections. The operation never progressed beyond creating prototype poisoned chocolates, because British intelligence couldn't determine how to guarantee Hitler would eat the specific chocolates and not share them with others or give them to subordinates. The poisoned chocolate plan was abandoned in favor of more reliable assassination methods, and Hitler continued eating normal chocolate without encountering British intelligence's attempts to weaponize confections. The chocolate assassination became another creative but impractical wartime plan that sounded better in concept than in potential execution. 30. In 2011, Oscar Ramiro Ortega Hernandez attempted to assassinate President Obama by shooting at the White House with a semi-automatic rifle from his car parked on Constitution Avenue. Ortega fired multiple rounds at the White House, hitting the building's exterior and even breaking a window. The assassination failed because Obama wasn't actually at the White House when the shooting occurred. He was traveling and the building was occupied by staff and family, but not the president. Bullets hit the building exterior without reaching any interior occupied spaces where people were actually located. Shooting from moving or stationary vehicles at long range is inaccurate, and the White House's construction provided protection. The would-be assassin was arrested days later after his car was found abandoned with the weapon inside and witnesses identified him. The failed assassination demonstrated that shooting at the White House without knowing if your target is present, where they are located within the massive building, or whether exterior walls will stop bullets is an ineffective assassination strategy, and that presidential security includes monitoring for such attacks even when the president isn't present. 31. The CIA planned to assassinate Castro using a beautifully colored poisoned conch shell placed in areas where Castro went diving, hoping he'd pick up the attractive shell and be killed by hidden toxins or explosives contained within. The operation involved creating a realistic shell that was actually a disguised weapon. The operation was canceled when CIA officers realized they couldn't control which diver found the shell first, couldn't guarantee Castro would pick it up, rather than other divers or marine researchers who frequented the same areas, had no way to ensure Castro would even notice one specific shell among thousands, and had essentially created an indiscriminate underwater murder device that might kill anyone who found it, including innocent civilians. The poisoned seashell joined other oceanic CIA assassination plots that seemed clever in planning meetings until someone considered practical implementation details and collateral damage possibilities. Castro continued collecting regular shells during dives without encountering weaponized shells scattered by creative but impractical intelligence planning, and the operation was filed away as another idea that worked better in theory than reality. 32. In 1975, Sarah Jane Moore attempted to assassinate President Gerald Ford by shooting him as he left a hotel in San Francisco, aiming from a crowd of onlookers across the street. Moore raised her gun and prepared to fire at Ford, who was visible and unprotected for a moment. The assassination failed when a bystander in the crowd named Oliver Sipple grabbed Moore's arm just as she fired, deflecting her aim upward and causing the shot to miss Ford and hit a building. Moore was immediately tackled by crowd members and police, and Ford was rushed to safety unharmed. The assassination attempt was foiled by a quick-thinking civilian who physically intervened at exactly the right moment, demonstrating that alert bystanders can prevent assassinations through direct action. Moore later admitted she'd tested her gun the day before and it had fired to the left, but she failed to adjust her aim accordingly during the actual assassination attempt, adding equipment malfunction awareness to the list of reasons her assassination attempt failed. This was actually the second assassination attempt on Ford in 3 weeks, making him one of the more frequently targeted presidents despite his relatively short time in office. 33. During the Renaissance, the Medici family survived multiple assassination attempts, including one where assassins attacked during church services, but failed to kill all their targets because coordinating simultaneous attacks in a large cathedral proved difficult. The Pazzi conspiracy of 1478 attempted to kill Lorenzo and Giuliano de' Medici during Easter Mass in Florence Cathedral, with multiple assassins positioned to strike simultaneously when the targets were vulnerable during religious services. The assassination partially succeeded when assassins killed Giuliano with multiple stab wounds, but completely failed to kill Lorenzo, who escaped with only minor wounds after being alerted by the commotion of his brother's murder and defended by friends. The assassination partially succeeded but completely failed in its goal of overthrowing Medici control, because leaving one Medici alive and angry resulted in brutal revenge against all conspirators and their families. The plot demonstrated that assassination conspiracies involving multiple targets require successfully killing all targets to achieve intended political outcomes, not just some of them, and that failed assassinations of powerful families often result in consequences worse than not attempting assassination at all. Lorenzo's revenge was swift and brutal, with conspirators hanged from windows and their family members persecuted, proving that partial success in political assassination is often worse than complete failure. 34. The CIA developed exploding seashells designed to kill Castro by placing attractive, colorful shells in his known diving areas, hoping he'd pick them up out of curiosity during underwater exploration. The operation involved creating shells that looked natural, but contained explosive charges designed to detonate when handled or moved. The operation was abandoned during planning when CIA officers couldn't solve the fundamental problem of controlling which diver would find the shell first, or ensuring Castro would be curious enough to pick up random shells rather than leaving them on the ocean floor. The exploding shell plan joined the CIA's extensive collection of oceanic assassination ideas that failed because they required controlling marine environments and human behavior in ways that weren't actually possible with available technology or planning. Castro continued diving without encountering weaponized shells scattered by intelligence agencies, with creative but logistically impossible ideas that assumed targets would cooperate by picking up specific objects, and the shells were never deployed. 35. In 1982, a would-be assassin named Juan Fernandez Crone attempted to kill Pope John Paul II using a knife during the Pope's visit to Fatima, Portugal. Crone rushed toward the Pope with a knife but was tackled by security before reaching his target. The assassination failed because Vatican security was present and functional, positioned to intercept threats. The assassin had no realistic plan for bypassing multiple layers of security, and attacking religious leaders at public events surrounded by guards and crowds is extremely difficult. The failed assassin was arrested and later revealed to be mentally disturbed and opposed to Vatican II reforms, joining the long list of would-be assassins whose attacks failed due to poor planning, effective security intervention, and mental instability that impaired judgment about feasibility. The Pope was unharmed and continued his visit, and the incident demonstrated that religious leaders at public events are heavily protected despite appearing accessible. 36. During the 1960s, the CIA considered using a fungal poison on Castro's cigars that would cause disorientation and mental impairment when smoked, hoping to make him appear incompetent during public appearances or confused during important decisions. The operation involved developing fungal toxins that could be applied to cigars, and would produce psychoactive effects when burned and inhaled. The operation was abandoned when CIA officers realized that cigars are difficult to contaminate without obvious signs of tampering, that fungal effects would be unpredictable and might not manifest as intended, that cigars contaminated with fungus might smell or taste wrong and be discarded, and that making Castro confused wasn't the same as making Castro dead. The fungal cigar plot was filed away as another creative but impractical Castro assassination idea that conflated disrupting leadership with assassination, and Castro continued smoking regular cigars without encountering CIA attempts to contaminate his tobacco supply with hallucinogenic or debilitating substances. The plan demonstrated the CIA's tendency to confuse assassination with other forms of disruption. 37. In 1968, an attempt was made to assassinate Argentine revolutionary Che Guevara by sending him a poison pen that would inject toxin when clicked, with the pen designed to look like a normal writing instrument. The assassination device was developed and prepared for delivery, but never reached Guevara, who was captured and executed by Bolivian forces before the pen could be delivered to him through intelligence channels. The poisoned pen assassination was rendered moot by conventional execution carried out by military forces, demonstrating that sometimes complicated assassination plots are unnecessary when simple military capture and execution works fine and achieves the same result faster. The pen remained unused in CIA storage, becoming a museum piece rather than an assassination weapon, and Guevara died from regular bullets fired by Bolivian soldiers rather than elaborate injection devices designed by intelligence agencies overthinking assassination methodology when conventional methods were available and effective. 38. In 1933, Giuseppe Zangara attempted to assassinate President-elect Franklin D. Roosevelt by shooting him at a public event in Miami's Bayfront Park. Zangara had positioned himself in the crowd but faced a significant problem. The assassination failed because Zangara was short, standing only 5 feet tall, and couldn't see clearly over the crowd of taller people surrounding him, so he stood on a wobbly folding chair that affected his aim significantly. He fired 5 shots, missing Roosevelt entirely, but hitting Chicago Mayor Anton Cermak and several other bystanders. Cermak died from his wounds weeks later, Roosevelt survived completely uninjured, and Zangara was quickly arrested and later executed for murder. The failed assassination demonstrated that height disadvantages and unstable shooting platforms significantly affect accuracy, that assassinating people in crowds requires clear line of sight to the correct target without obstructions, and that improvised shooting positions like wobbly chairs are terrible platforms for accurate gunfire. Zangara's execution was swift, occurring less than 5 weeks after the shooting, making it one of the fastest death penalty cases in American history. 39. The CIA planned to use bacterial contamination in Castro's scuba gear to cause fatal infection during diving, specifically targeting his breathing regulator or mouthpiece with bacteria that would be inhaled. The operation involved CIA medical experts identifying suitable bacterial cultures and developing contamination methods for diving equipment. The operation failed before implementation, when CIA medical experts explained that bacteria wouldn't survive in diving equipment's saltwater environment for long. That transmission through diving gear was unlikely given dilution and exposure factors. That infection from contaminated scuba equipment wasn't reliably fatal even if transmission occurred. And that the entire plan was based on wishful thinking about bacterial survival rather than actual microbiology. The bacterial diving gear plan joined other CIA attempts to weaponize Castro's diving hobby through biological agents, and Castro continued diving with equipment that wasn't contaminated by intelligence agencies who'd exhausted creative but scientifically impractical ideas for oceanic assassination that sounded clever but didn't work according to actual science. 40. In 1970, someone attempted to assassinate Pope Paul VI by attacking him with a knife during a visit to the Philippines at Manila Airport. The assassin, Bolivian painter Benjamin Mendoza, rushed at the Pope disguised as a priest and stabbed at him. The assassination failed when security intervened immediately, and the knife only caused minor superficial wounds to the Pope's chest before the attacker was subdued by guards and crowd members. The Pope survived with minor injuries, the attacker was arrested and later declared insane, and the assassination attempt demonstrated that knife attacks against protected religious leaders at public events usually fail due to rapid security intervention, and that disguises don't help if security is watching for any threats regardless of clothing. The failed assassin later claimed mental disturbance and opposition to Vatican policies, joining numerous other assassination attempts that failed due to inadequate planning, effective security response, and attackers whose mental states impaired judgment about success probability or the morality of violence. 41. During the 1960s, the CIA developed a plan to kill Castro using a poison-tipped pen that would inject toxin through needle mechanisms hidden in normal-looking writing instruments. The operation never resulted in an assassination attempt because delivering the pen to Castro reliably was impossible. Ensuring he'd use that specific pen among his many writing instruments was unfeasible, and the pen design was complicated enough that malfunction was likely. The poisoned pen remained unused, joining other CIA assassination devices that sounded sophisticated but had no practical delivery mechanism, and Castro continued writing with normal pens that didn't contain hidden injection systems. 42. In 1914, Gavrilo Princip successfully assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, but this came after earlier failed attempts that same day. First, a co-conspirator threw a bomb at the Archduke's car, but the bomb bounced off and exploded under the wrong vehicle. The assassination then succeeded only because the Archduke's driver took a wrong turn later that day, coincidentally stopping directly in front of Princip, who'd given up and was eating a sandwich. The assassination succeeded through absurd coincidence after initially failing, demonstrating that sometimes successful assassinations happen despite poor planning, rather than because of good planning, and that wrong turns can change history. 43. The CIA planned to kill Castro by lacing his cigars with botulinum toxin, powerful enough to kill him when smoked. The operation failed when CIA officers couldn't figure out how to contaminate Castro's personal cigar supply without detection, couldn't guarantee he'd smoke contaminated cigars before the toxin degraded, and realized that botulinum toxin might not survive cigar combustion temperatures. The botulinum cigar plan joined the growing list of CIA cigar-based assassination attempts that failed before being attempted, and Castro continued smoking regular cigars without encountering various CIA efforts to weaponize his tobacco habits. 44. In 1995, someone attempted to assassinate President Clinton by crashing a small plane into the White House. The assassination failed because the plane was too small to penetrate deep into the building. Clinton wasn't in the area where the plane crashed, and flying small aircraft into large buildings is less effective than movies suggest. The pilot died in the crash, but Clinton was unharmed and never in actual danger. The suicide attack demonstrated that dramatic assassination methods aren't necessarily effective assassination methods, and that security architecture can prevent catastrophic damage from vehicle impacts. 45. And finally, there's the CIA's most absurd Castro assassination plot, deploying LSD in Castro's broadcast studio air system to make him appear crazy during a televised speech, apparently believing that making Castro temporarily disoriented during one broadcast would end his regime. The operation was planned in extensive detail, including ventilation system analysis and dosage calculations, before being abandoned when someone finally asked whether making Castro confused during one speech would actually accomplish anything politically meaningful. The LSD broadcasting plan represented the CIA's peak absurdity in Castro assassination attempts. An operation elaborate enough to require engineering studies, but ridiculous enough that its goal was making Castro weird on television rather than actually killing him. The plan was filed away after CIA officers realized they'd spent months planning an assassination attempt that wasn't actually an assassination attempt, just an expensive prank that might make Castro seem strange during one broadcast, before he recovered and continued ruling Cuba. Castro never encountered weaponized hallucinogens in his broadcasting equipment, finished his television career without unplanned psychedelic experiences, and remained alive despite hundreds of CIA plots that ranged from creative to absurdly creative. Here's the brutal truth about assassination attempts. Most failures prove that wanting someone dead and having the skills to make someone dead are completely different things. These failed assassins discovered that assassination requires planning, equipment maintenance, luck, and ideally a target who doesn't have security details, medical equipment that coincidentally protects them, or intelligence agencies too embarrassed to execute their own plans. The real assassination was the competence they never developed along the way. Turns out that killing people is actually difficult when your targets have security, your equipment malfunctions, your plans are absurd, or you're simply not very good at assassination. History's lesson is clear. If you're planning to assassinate someone, maybe don't. But if you absolutely must, perhaps take notes from these failures about what not to do, and remember that the best security is sometimes just your enemy's incompetence. Subscribe if you want more historical failures from people who were really bad at their chosen professions. And remember that sometimes the greatest protection isn't security guards. It's assassins who can't shoot straight, maintain equipment, or execute plans that make sense.